Erwin Rommel, often referred to as the Desert Fox, was one of World War II's most skilled and respected military leaders.
What Rommel brings is a completely different tactical mindset.
Though serving the contentious Nazi regime, his tactical genius, chivalry, and unconventional approach to warfare have made him a study subject for military enthusiasts and historians alike. This video dives deep into his life, revealing the complete story of Rommel. Early life and First World War. Erwin Johannes Jürgen Rommel was born on November 15, 1891, in Heidenheim, Germany, to a middle-class family. His father, Erwin Rommel Sr., was a teacher, and his mother, Helene von Loos, hailed from an old Swabian family. Rommel's upbringing was modest, and initially, there wasn't any particular indication that he would embark on a remarkable military career. In fact, in his younger years, Erwin had contemplated becoming an engineer. However, influenced by his father and the allure of a military career, he eventually decided to join the 124th Württemberg Infantry Regiment as an officer cadet in 1910. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Rommel was poised for his first real test in the field of battle. Serving as a lieutenant, he found himself on the Western Front. Here, Rommel's natural talent for leadership and tactics began to emerge. The challenging terrains of France and Belgium tested the young lieutenant, but Rommel displayed an uncanny ability to adapt and lead. He was fearless in his recon missions, often going behind enemy lines to gather intelligence. This audaciousness earned him both admiration from his superiors and loyalty from the men he commanded. One of the most notable episodes from this period was Rommel's role in the Battle of Caporetto in 1917. Here, leading a small German-Italian force, he managed to capture Mount Matagur along with 9,000 Italian soldiers, using just a fraction of that number. His audacious strategy, coupled with his ability to motivate his troops and exploit the element of surprise, played a critical role in this victory. For his actions at Caporetto, Rommel was awarded the Pour le Mérite, Germany's highest military honor at the time. It was an accolade that few could achieve, marking him as a rising star in the German military hierarchy. And yet, for all his accolades, the war was not just a series of victories for Rommel. He was injured multiple times and witnessed the horrors of trench warfare firsthand. These experiences, facing death and the brutalities of combat, shaped his perspective on warfare. Rommel was known to prioritize the welfare of his men, often sharing their dangers, hardships, and living conditions. This humane approach to leadership, even in the heat of battle, would become a defining trait of Rommel's career. As the war progressed, Rommel's responsibilities grew. From leading platoons and companies, he found himself commanding battalions. However, as with most soldiers of the Great War, Rommel experienced the fatigue and disillusionment that came with years of prolonged conflict. The war, initially believed to be a swift affair, dragged on with heavy casualties on all sides. By the time the armistice was signed in 1918, the landscape of Europe had changed dramatically, and Rommel, like many others, returned to a Germany that was grappling with post-war challenges, both politically and economically. The conclusion of the First World War marked the end of a significant chapter in Rommel's life. The experiences, both the highs of victory and the lows of defeat, had molded him into a seasoned military leader. As the world moved towards the interwar period, Rommel too would transition, evolving from a battlefield commander to roles that showcased other facets of his talents, including his stint as an instructor and author. But the lessons from the trenches, the values of leadership, and the horrors of war would remain with him, influencing his strategies, decisions, and actions in the bigger conflict that lay ahead. Rommel's early life and experiences in the First World War not only laid the foundation for his future endeavors, but also offered glimpses of the military genius that he would become. The audacious young officer of World War I would, in time, transform into the Desert Fox of World War II, earning respect and admiration even from his adversaries. Interwar years, from instructor to author. The post-World War I period in Germany was marked by significant political upheaval, economic struggles, and the birth of the Weimar Republic. For the German military, the Treaty of Versailles imposed severe restrictions, limiting the size of the army and barring certain types of weaponry. In this turbulent environment, Erwin Rommel made his transition from a battlefield commander to varied roles that further enriched his military repertoire. Upon returning from the war, Rommel took up a series of staff roles within the diminished Reichswehr, the German army during the Weimar Republic. These roles exposed him to the higher echelons of military strategy and administration. While Rommel might have excelled on the battlefield, he was equally adept in staff roles, demonstrating a clear understanding of broader strategic issues and the complexities of military organization. In 1929, Rommel was appointed as an instructor at the infantry school in Dresden. This role, though drastically different from his wartime experiences, provided him with a platform to impart his knowledge and insights to a new generation of German officers. It was here that Rommel's distinct approach to warfare became evident. He emphasized the importance of initiative, rapid decision-making, and flexibility in the face of changing battlefield scenarios. Rejecting the static tactics of trench warfare that dominated the First World War, Rommel championed a more fluid and dynamic approach to combat. These ideas were not just restricted to the lecture halls of Dresden. Recognizing the need for a comprehensive guide on infantry tactics, Rommel penned Infanterie Greift an, Infantry Attacks, in 1937. This work chronicled his experiences from World War I, providing detailed analyses of various battles and the decisions he made. It wasn't merely a memoir, but a tactical manual that highlighted the importance of leadership, terrain utilization, and the element of surprise. The book was well received within military circles and firmly established Rommel as a respected military theorist. However, the 1930s weren't just about academic pursuits for Rommel. The decade witnessed the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, which had significant implications for the German military. Rommel, like many officers of his generation, was initially impressed by Hitler's nationalist and anti-communist rhetoric. By 1938, Rommel was serving as the commandant of the War Academy at Wiener Neustadt, and his reputation had garnered the attention of the Nazi leadership. Rommel's interaction with the Nazi leadership culminated when he was chosen to command the Führer-Begleithauptquartier, the Führer Escort Battalion, responsible for Hitler's personal protection during his visits to occupied Czechoslovakia. Rommel's assignment to this role, albeit non-combative, marked his entry into Hitler's inner circle. This proximity to the Führer was a double-edged sword. While it provided Rommel with opportunities, it also intricately linked his fate with that of the Nazi regime. The late 1930s also saw Germany's military might grow, as the restrictions of the Treaty of Versailles were blatantly ignored. New divisions were raised, modern equipment was procured, and innovative tactics were developed. The stage was being set for another major conflict, and Rommel, with his rich combat experience and fresh academic insights, was poised to play a pivotal role. As the decade drew to a close, Europe stood on the brink of another war. Rommel, now deeply entrenched in the workings of the German military hierarchy, was set to transition once again from the instructor and author of the interwar years to the dynamic commander of World War II. The challenges ahead were monumental, but the Desert Fox, armed with lessons from the past and visions for the future, was ready. Rommel in the Blitzkrieg. The term Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, aptly described the German military strategy at the outset of World War II. A combination of rapid mechanized infantry movements coordinated with precise airstrikes aimed to strike the enemy suddenly and decisively. As Europe was once again engulfed in war, Erwin Rommel was ready to deploy this new form of warfare, marking a stark departure from the sluggish trench battles of the previous global conflict. At the war's onset, Rommel, recently promoted to Major General, was given command of the 7th Panzer Division. It was a crucial assignment, as the division was part of the vanguard of the German advance into Western Europe. Rommel's approach to command in this new form of warfare was nothing short of revolutionary. He often led from the front, a position where he could make instantaneous decisions, capitalizing on the momentum of the battle. In May 1940, As the Germans launched their invasion of France and the Low Countries, Rommel's 7th Panzer Division quickly earned the nickname Ghost Division. Its rapid advances often outpaced communication lines, leaving even the German High Command uncertain of its precise location. Rommel's division was instrumental in crossing the Meuse River, a natural obstacle that many believed would slow the German advance. Instead, under Rommel's leadership, the 7th Panzer Division quickly overcame French defenses, setting the stage for the German army's thrust into the heart of France. Rommel's emphasis on speed, surprise, and relentless pursuit was evident in these early days of the war. His division would often cover incredible distances in a single day, bewildering the Allies and leaving them scrambling to form a cohesive defense. It wasn't just the physical pace of the advance that made the difference, but also the psychological impact. The rapidity and ferocity of the blitzkrieg caused panic and confusion, breaking the enemy's will to resist. However, Rommel's aggressive tactics were not without critics. His propensity to lead from the front and make decisions without always communicating with higher command caused tensions within the German military hierarchy. Yet, even his detractors couldn't deny the results. Town after town, fortress after fortress, fell to the 7th Panzer Division. The culmination of these successes was the fall of Cherbourg, a strategic port on the French coast. It is essential to note that Rommel's successes were not solely due to his brilliance, but also the professionalism and training of the German military machine. The coordination between ground and air units, the effectiveness of German engineering units in rapidly constructing bridges, and the morale of the German soldiers all played a part in the triumph of the Blitzkrieg. Rommel, however, with his audacious leadership, became the embodiment of this new style of warfare. The fall of France in June 1940 was swift and unexpected. The Blitzkrieg had proven its effectiveness, and Rommel had emerged as one of its foremost practitioners. His exploits earned him widespread recognition, not just within Germany, but also among the Allies. Winston Churchill, in a speech to the House of Commons, acknowledged Rommel's skills, marking him as a formidable adversary. Challenges in North Africa. North Africa presented a theater of war starkly different from the European landscapes where the Blitzkrieg had proven so effective. Instead of rolling green fields and dense forests, the battle would be waged across vast desert expanses under a scorching sun, where sandstorms could reshape the terrain in a matter of hours. Erwin Rommel, now at the helm of the Africa Corps, was about to face some of the most formidable challenges of his military career. One of the most pressing issues was the supply line. The vast distances and inhospitable terrains of North Africa meant that keeping the front lines supplied was a logistical nightmare. Fuel, water, ammunition, and other essentials had to be transported across hundreds of miles, often on unpaved desert tracks. The British Royal Navy's dominance in the Mediterranean made sea resupplies risky, and the long distances from European ports rendered the Axis supply chain vulnerable to Allied attacks. Rommel, aware of these limitations, often had to temper his aggressive tactics, ensuring that his advances did not overstretch his supply lines. The environment itself was an adversary. The extreme temperatures tested the endurance of both men and machines. Tanks and vehicles, so vital to Rommel's tactics, were susceptible to overheating, and their engines could be choked by the fine desert sand. Soldiers battled dehydration, and the blinding sandstorms could halt operations and disrupt strategies. Yet, in these challenging conditions, Rommel's leadership shone. His insistence on sharing the hardships of his men, his frequent visits to the front lines, and his knack for improvisation in the face of adversity bolstered the morale of the Africa Corps. Yet the challenges weren't just logistical or environmental. The Allies, primarily the British Eighth Army, were a formidable foe. Commanders like Bernard Montgomery understood desert warfare and were determined to halt the Axis advance. Battles such as El Alamein showcased the tactical brilliance of both sides, with each trying to outmaneuver the other. Rommel's initial successes, such as the capture of Tobruk, were countered by Allied strategies, making North Africa a seesaw of victories and setbacks. Intelligence played a crucial role in this theater. The British, with their code-breaking successes at Bletchley Park, often had insights into Rommel's plans. This information asymmetry was a significant handicap for the German forces, as the British could anticipate and prepare for many of Rommel's moves. Furthermore, the politics of the broader war also played into the North African campaign. As the war raged on, Germany's commitments on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union and in other theaters strained resources. Reinforcements, supplies, and air support, which Rommel repeatedly requested, were not always forthcoming. The stretched Axis resources meant that Rommel often had to fight with what he had, relying on his tactical acumen to overcome material shortages. Despite these challenges, the Desert Fox's reputation grew. Rommel's innovative tactics, such as using the desert's topography to his advantage, laying extensive minefields, and orchestrating rapid flanking maneuvers, frustrated and sometimes bewildered the Allies. His chivalrous conduct, ensuring the fair treatment of prisoners of war and avoiding civilian casualties, stood in stark contrast to the brutality seen in other theaters of World War II. This earned him respect not just among his troops but also from his adversaries. Later WW2 campaigns and D-Day. After the grueling North African campaign, Erwin Rommel's reputation as a formidable military tactician was well established. However, the broader scope of World War II was shifting, and Rommel would soon find himself engaged in new theaters, facing challenges both old and new. Post-North Africa, Rommel was reassigned to Europe, where he was tasked with shoring up the Atlantic Wall, a series of fortifications intended to prevent an Allied invasion. By this time, it was clear to the German High Command that an Allied landing on the Western Front was imminent. The extensive coastline, stretching from Norway to the Spanish border, was a potential point of invasion, and Rommel was well aware of the significance of this defensive assignment. The Desert Fox approached the task with his characteristic zeal. Inspecting the defenses, he identified weak points and oversaw the rapid construction of bunkers, anti-tank ditches, and minefields. His experience in North Africa, where static defenses like minefields played a significant role, was clearly reflected in his strategy for the Atlantic Wall. Rommel believed in a strong forward defense. He posited that the invasion had to be stopped at the beaches itself, for if the Allies established a foothold, their superior numbers and resources would eventually prevail. His foresight was soon put to the test on June 6, 1944, now known as D-Day. The Allies launched Operation Overlord, their ambitious amphibious assault on the beaches of Normandy. Rommel, unfortunately for the Germans, was not present in Normandy on that pivotal day. He was celebrating his wife's birthday in Germany. Upon hearing of the invasion, he rushed back but faced challenges in coordinating a cohesive counterattack, partly due to Hitler's reluctance to release reserve panzer divisions. The Normandy defenses, while extensive, were not enough to halt the sheer scale and intensity of the Allied assault. The Allies secured a foothold and quickly built up their forces. Over the subsequent weeks, fierce battles raged in the Normandy countryside. Rommel, always one to lead from the front, was in the thick of it, trying to stem the Allied advance. However, the combined weight of Allied air supremacy, artillery, and infantry numbers began to push the German defenses back. Rommel faced not just military challenges, but also political ones. The relationship between him and the Nazi high command, especially Hitler, had become strained. Rommel's realistic assessments of the situation in Normandy and his calls for a strategic withdrawal to save the German army were not well received by Hitler, who demanded nothing less than a fight to the last man. Tragically, on July 17, 1944, Rommel's car was strafed by an Allied aircraft in France. He sustained severe injuries, which took him out of active command. While he was recuperating, the situation in Normandy deteriorated rapidly for the Germans. The Allies broke out, and their march towards Germany was relentless. Rommel's absence from the front and the subsequent events marked a turning point in the Western Front. The man who had so brilliantly led his troops in North Africa and meticulously prepared the Atlantic defenses was sidelined during one of the most critical phases of the war: controversies and relations with Hitler. Erwin Rommel's stellar military career is replete with instances of tactical genius and leadership, but it is inextricably linked to the Nazi regime, particularly his relationship with Adolf Hitler. This association, combined with certain actions and decisions, has enveloped Rommel's legacy in a cloak of controversy and debate. From the early days of the Nazi regime, Rommel's career trajectory was noticeably influenced by Hitler's patronage. Beginning with his appointment to lead the Führerbegleithauptquartier, responsible for Hitler's protection, Rommel was often in proximity to the Nazi inner circle. However, this closeness was not merely a matter of shared ideology. While Rommel admired Germany's rejuvenation under Hitler, especially in terms of its military resurgence, there's scant evidence to suggest that he was a fervent Nazi. In fact, Rommel often showed a distinct disinterest in politics, focusing primarily on his military responsibilities. Yet, as the war progressed, Rommel's interactions with Hitler intensified, especially during critical campaigns. Rommel's rapid successes in France and later in North Africa elevated his status in Hitler's eyes. The Führer saw in Rommel not just a brilliant commander, but also a potential propaganda tool. The embodiment of the German martial spirit. However, as is often the case with such relationships, cracks began to appear. Particularly in the latter stages of the North African campaign and during the defense of Normandy, differences in strategic outlooks became evident. Rommel's realistic assessments and pragmatic suggestions, like strategic withdrawals or repositioning of forces, often clashed with Hitler's dogmatic and sometimes delusional directives. This resulted in tension and, at times, open disagreements. Aside from military decisions, another significant controversy surrounds Rommel's stance on the treatment of POWs and the Jewish question. Rommel is often credited with a chivalrous approach to warfare. He ensured that captured Allied soldiers in his sectors were treated fairly and consistently intervened to prevent SS units from committing atrocities. Moreover, there is no documented evidence that Rommel participated in or endorsed the Holocaust. However, it's important to remember that while he might not have been directly involved, Rommel was still a senior figure in the Wehrmacht, an institution that collaborated with the SS and was complicit in numerous war crimes. The extent to which Rommel was aware of or turned a blind eye to such activities remains a subject of historical debate. Rommel's relationship with Hitler took its most tragic turn in connection with the July 20, 1944 plot. A faction within the German military, disillusioned with Hitler's leadership, attempted to assassinate him. While the plot failed, the subsequent investigations implicated numerous officers. Rommel's name, much to the shock of the Nazi leadership, emerged in connection with the conspirators. Though the evidence was circumstantial, and it remains unclear how deeply Rommel was involved or informed, it put him in an untenable position. Facing the prospect of a public trial, which would have undoubtedly affected his family and tarnished his reputation, Rommel was given a grim choice by the Nazi leadership: face the People's Court, or commit suicide quietly. Choosing the latter to protect his family, Rommel's death was portrayed as a result of his injuries from the earlier strafing incident, and he was given a state funeral. The plot against Hitler and Rommel's end. As World War II raged on, disillusionment with Hitler's leadership grew among sections of the German military and aristocracy. The mounting losses, combined with the Führer's increasingly erratic decisions, led to covert discussions about removing him from power. This undercurrent of dissent culminated in the July 20, 1944 plot, an attempt to assassinate Hitler and initiate a coup d'état. The primary conspirators, including Klaus von Stauffenberg, believed that Hitler's removal was the only way to save Germany from total devastation. The plan was to kill Hitler using a bomb placed at his Wolf's Lair headquarters and subsequently mobilize the reserve army to take control of key locations in Berlin. While the bomb did explode, killing and injuring several, Hitler miraculously survived with minor injuries. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The coup attempt faltered almost immediately, and the Gestapo was set into motion to root out all involved. What followed was a massive purge, with scores of suspects arrested, tortured for information, and often executed. It was in this turbulent aftermath that Erwin Rommel's name emerged. While he wasn't directly involved in the planning or execution of the assassination attempt, connections between him and some conspirators were established. Some suggested that Rommel, known for his disagreements with Hitler's military strategies and known to express despair over Germany's future, was approached about the plot and did not report it. Others claimed he was seen as a potential leader in a post-Hitler government. The evidence against Rommel was, at best, circumstantial. However, his stature as a war hero and the symbol of German resilience presented a dilemma for the Nazi leadership. They couldn't afford the public relations disaster of trying the Desert Fox openly, nor could they ignore the alleged links to the conspirators. On October 14, 1944, Rommel bid farewell to his family and joined the two generals in a car. A short while later, he consumed the poison. The public was informed that Rommel had succumbed to the injuries he sustained from the earlier strafing attack, and a state funeral followed, with all the pomp and ceremony befitting a hero of the Reich. Rommel's death marked a tragic end to a career that spanned 2 world wars. His strategic brilliance, leadership acumen, and personal charisma made him one of the most respected military figures, both within Germany and among the Allies. However, his association with a regime that was increasingly seen as oppressive, combined with the murky circumstances of his final days, ensured that Rommel's legacy would forever be shrouded in a mix of admiration, controversy, and intrigue. The story of Rommel, like many during the tumultuous times of World War II, serves as a reminder of the complex interplay of duty, morality, and survival. His end, tied to a plot against the very regime he served, offers a poignant reflection on the choices, sacrifices, and dilemmas faced by individuals caught in the whirlwind of history's most devastating conflict.